buttoned that up.
I'm very relaxed, as you can tell. I've been stretching.
What's been going on, mate?
Mate, I rolled in a 6RR this year and just been getting pumped, mate. Because I obviously took a year off, essentially, paid leave, because not fit to walk for 14 months. And I thought I'd be smart and get upgraded before I marched back into a battalion. And I was like, oh, it'll be fine. I'll roll with the punches. So I was walking for 3 weeks. And I banged in the BFA, banged in the combat pairs to get upgraded because I was like, fuck marching into a unit, downgraded. And it's come back to bite me because I've just gone field. And I've got a massive open wound in my back. So I've just been rolling with the punches since I rolled in a 6RR.
So, because what fucking happened? You, is it still there? Is it healed?
No,
So-
whoa. Go tell the full story because I hear there's a story.
Yeah, so there's no, I can see the smiles. I don't think there's that good of a bloody story, but the background of it was I just, back at ADFA actually, I went out field and as you know, it's unhygienic as, and there's this thing called Jeep bum, which is the common term for it. It's what people call it in the army. And all it is just an ingrown hair on the bottom of your tailbone. So anybody subject to get it, I got it a couple of years ago, had surgery for it, and I was back in the gym within a week. So 6 years later, still in the army, feel another bump on my tailbone. I'm like, yep, had this before, no worries. I'll go in, get it operated on. I'll be back in the gym in a week. And at the time, I was actually training for Special Forces, so I was ripped up, feeling good about myself. And I walked into the surgeon's office. I was like, all right, mate, sort this out. And unfortunately, 14 months later, it was finally sorted out. So had a surgery on it. A week later, I was expecting to be all good to go. And it just kept going to shit. So had 8 surgeries. Yeah, honestly. Yeah. So 8 surgeries in total. And you're right, Adrian, because of the location of it, pain in the ass, mate. Yeah. Pain in the ass. And that's not the first time that pun's been used.
Is that, so ingrown hairs need surgery? I thought you just pop them like pimples and then they go back to normal. That's not...
No. So because of the location of the ingrown hair, it's so close to your spine. What can actually happen is if the hair continues to go in, it wraps around your spine and it can actually cripple you. So it can fully make you paraplegic. So they need to operate on it.
Even down at your tailbone?
That's right, mate. That's right.
Oh, mate.
Yeah, and it makes hairy blokes because it's more susceptible in hairier dudes. And I see Mex's long locks and beard. Yeah, and it honestly, you just wake up one day with a lump, and yeah, that's you done if you're unlucky.
There goes 14 months.
So this is a rabbit hole that we can not go down or go down. I'm easy either way. But is this because you're a hairy dude that shaves, or is it just being hairy that causes the problem?
Just being hairy. If you're sweating, you're sitting down a lot, like I'd say most people do in office jobs. It can be hereditary, and yeah, all of a sudden you're out, you're down and out. And what I try to do is find other people that have gone through this. And yeah, you Google it and you just see these depressing chat forums, unfortunately, of people going through it. And you would never know about it, but all these poor bastards, like, yep, hey, haven't been able to sit down for 6 months. Can someone please just fucking help me? Because this is horrendous. And like, you're right to laugh. This is what makes it so shit. You can't tell anybody, or you tell people about it, but they're like, yep, either just an ingrown hair, like you'll be right, or oh yeah, pain in the ass, mate. Like making jokes about it. It's fucking shit.
For days.
Yeah, man. So like I couldn't obviously lie down on my back for 14 months. So horrible sleeping pattern. Couldn't sit down. So therefore couldn't drive to like see mates or anything. Could hardly shower. And yeah, going to the toilet. Horrible. Yeah, absolutely debilitating. Yeah.
Fuck. Do they give you one of those hemorrhoid pillows that you can like sit your ass cheeks on?
No, so here's the thing. So it was like the feedback from the medical staff, they never gave me one of those things because the feedback was always, hey, mate, you'll be better next week. You'll be better next week. And that went on for over 60 weeks. So every week it was just getting kicked while I was down, hey. Absolutely kicked while I was down. So my mindset would be like, yep, sweet, next week, I can start walking again. I can start seeing my friends. I can go back to work. I can start playing footy and going back to boxing. And then the end of the week would come around and they were just like, oh, sorry, mate, it'll be another week. Yeah.
60 weeks.
I mean, it's not even, you wouldn't think, this is like a two-part problem here. Number one is you were fucking fit, ready for selection, training, killing it, right? And then you get knocked on your ass, not even on your ass, you're on your belly for 14 months, just going, when the fuck does this end? Was that something that...
Mate, it was crazy. So, I liken it to COVID and boys going through, quarantine, the 2 weeks sort of quarantine, just being isolated and stuff in the room with nothing to do. I essentially did COVID quarantine for 14 months. It was rough, hey. And the fitness side of it, you're dead right. Once your routine goes out the window, if you've got nothing to look forward to when you wake up in the morning, it makes it bloody hard. So yeah, very similar to COVID quarantine. Very similar. Just rubbish, mate.
I don't reckon you could do the 8 principles of Swiss 8 it sounds like you'd be the anti-Swiss 8 for the last 14 months.
I'm the anti-Swiss 8. And I think that's important as well because it shows just what happens when you go from abiding by your principles, I've got them written down here and they're excellent. Your fitness, nutrition, mindfulness, sleep, right? The first 4. If you lose your ability to have any sort of purpose in your day, work, relationships, your fitness, well, there's fitness obviously gone, but nutrition, what's the point in your mind? Maintaining a good diet when you can hardly walk around. I put on 26 kilograms max over the 14 months, and what I've been told by one of the better physios that I've seen is, NASA pays people to lie down and do nothing for periods of time, right? I should have called them up and be like, hey, but because I wasn't going to call them up and be like, hey, I've got a week in bed. If I had known it was 14 months, I could have made some money out of it probably.
Absolutely.
But
call Elon Musk up, see what he says.
Yeah, maybe I can go to Mars, mate. But yeah, so one of the better physios that I saw, he was telling me the bone degradation, and you don't get this back. He thinks that my bone density would have reduced by at least 30% over that period of time. So that inactivity, rough, bloody rough. But sleep as well. I'm telling you, you'll laugh at this, Adrian. You're less polite than Rex because I've only just met you. But what I had on me, mate, was a pump. You guys will both laugh, actually. I had a pump on me, right? It's about a 3.5 kilogram pump. And they call it a negative wound therapy pump. So it sucks out all the blood, all the moisture, because I had 40 staph infections while I was, every week, mate. Just, on antibiotics the whole time. And what it does, it draws out all the blood from the wounds because it's just a big flesh wound. And so I had to carry around a pump with me with a cord, and you could see all this shit going around. And the worst thing about it was it's battery powered, and Elon Musk hasn't had his hands on it, so the sun doesn't charge the thing. So guess what I have to do with this bloody pump? Is stick it in the wall, obviously, mate. And so the pump's connected to me. I'm connected to the pump's connected to the wall. I'm a fucking human iPhone, mate. So the thing starts beeping at me, right? I'm walking around, it's beeping at me. Got to get home, got to plug into the wall. Absolutely crazy.
So how long did you say? 60 weeks?
Yeah, that's right. 14 months.
Out of action, not training, eating poorly, not sleeping well, and smashing your body with antibiotics the whole time.
Yeah, the whole time, mate.
How the fuck are you still alive?
Yeah,
You've come good now, obviously?
Yeah, so it's a good question. There were actually 3 moments throughout the whole process where I actually did think I was gonna die because the flesh wound was so large and it's just this big open wound, and I'd have to go into the hospital to do dressing changes. There were 3 occasions where they accidentally cut arteries right down deep, and I'd start bleeding out, losing blood, or I'd be away from the hospital on another occasion and an artery just burst. And here I am with, it looks like a cannon wound. If you were to get shot with a cannon, that's what it looks like. And so I just started bleeding out, pretty close to death. And yeah, to the point where I had to, unfortunately, text my family as I was losing consciousness and be like, hey, Mum, hey, bro, like, love you guys. I'm currently fucking dying, so it's been real. Yeah, so 2 times, yeah, but completely out of action, man. It was fucking rubbish. And to answer your question, how I'm still alive, you can imagine sort of the pent up motivation that I had to get the fuck out of bed. And I mentioned earlier, I put on 26 kilograms. What happened when I had to come back to work? You got to fit into your uniform. I could not fit into my uniform, obviously, and I wasn't going to go to the clothing store and just accept, yep, this is the new me, fat as hell. I think I was 117 kilograms at my max. So what I did was I did actually abide by one of the Swiss 8 principles, and I cracked into my nutrition. And within 3 weeks, and you'll be like, that's insane. Within 3 weeks, I lost about 10 kilograms. I just watched my calorie intake, full ketogenic, lost 10 kilograms to fit back into my cams. As far as the fitness side of things was concerned, like, you do what you have to do. And my thing was I just started walking in the morning. And after 14 months of not walking, it was crazy. I've never experienced shin splints in my life. I've been fortunate to be a super active guy, but just walking around for 30 minutes, I was coming home and having to ice my body to recover. So I just kept doing that, kept at it, falling asleep when I got back to work just because I didn't have the nutrition to keep me awake. But yeah, just cracked on and then got back to it, hey, because after that long in bed, you think anything's possible. Hey, you come that close to dying, you're just like, fuck it, I can do anything.
Yeah. So are you pumping probiotics and stuff now? Like, 'cause that's a long time to be on antibiotics.
Huge time. Yeah. So Yakult was my go-to, and yeah, just absolutely smashed that. Increased my water intake, and I'm sure there'll be some sort of medical side effects from everything down the line. So I'm not really looking forward to that, but definitely something like that will show its head.
If you were a civvy, so this is sick, right? So the defence is actually, this is where defence look after you, right?
Yeah.
That's 14 months of paid leave. That's fucking sick. Civvy Street, when do they... I've been a civilian now for 8 months of my fucking adult life. When do they go, nah, mate, do you get workers' comp? Do you have to claim on health insurance? And then they're like, that's it, mate, go.
Well, I mean, I can jump in and answer that if you want, mate. But if it's workers' comp only covers you if you hurt yourself at work. I mean, arguably, you could say, being an officer, you spend a lot of time sitting down and not a lot of time working. So therefore, it was work related. The army would be good with that anyway. But if you're, it depends on your boss. If you're sitting in an office and you get an ingrown hair in your ass, realistically, you could probably fight the case to say it's because I was sitting down all day. But if work cover says no, you are fucked.
I met a tradie at the hospital. He was completely fucked. Hey, out of action for 6 months. I think he was on his last year of his apprenticeship, and yeah, they had to let him go. Could not keep up with work, and he tried there as well for a while, carrying his bag to the work site, but completely out of his job, fucked.
Yeah, I mean, and that's it depends on which lens you look through. Like, there's people out there that whinge and say the army doesn't do enough for us, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, it's a pretty fucking safe place to, well, safe depending on where you are, but job security wise, like, they look after you. They were even through COVID when everyone else was firing people, going, no, we've got no money. Army's like, oh, if you've got out recently, you can come back, like, not work for the dole, but we'll give you a job and keep you secure.
Mate, they delayed my discharge for 8 months for COVID. They're like, "Do you sure you want to get out now in the middle of a pandemic? We'll give you another 8 months. You can just chill the fuck out for a bit."
Yeah, exactly. That's gold.
I was saying job security. The army kind of look after you in that respect, but I'm just interested, when you're at this point in your life where you phone your mum and your family and you're like, well, look, not the glorious death I was chasing, not the poetic death, but death nonetheless, and you've got to face your own, what's the word for it? Mortality. There's two types of people, right? Well, there's probably many. Let's not pigeonhole and pretend I'm a psychologist. There's some people that could possibly climb into a bottom of a bottle and never come out, right? And just be like, well, I'm fucked. I'm not going to get over this, or I'm just going to be a piece of shit and give up in life.
Yeah.
And then there's other people who decide what was going on to launch what you did, mate?
Yeah, so good question. And I felt the same way at the time. And there was definitely times where I looked at alcohol, and obviously I was on a shit ton of pain medication as well, constant pain as an escape route, because it was fucking horrible. But what I did, I tried to find someone else that had been through something similar to me. And I'm very fortunate, obviously in the army, with boys that have faced life and death previously, and how they've dealt with it moving forward. So what I wanted to do was find someone else that had dealt with this and try to learn from them. So I started off just online, just looking, I think I mentioned it before, just going to like these chat forums where people were dealing with this stuff. And unfortunately, not only had no one gone through like 8 surgeries in 14 months like I had, I think I might have the worst bloody case of this in the world, if I'm honest. It's fucked. Doctors see it now and they just look at it and they're like, I don't know what that is. So no one could help me, not even like the medical staff. And then I tried to find more people that had gone through what I've gone through, and I couldn't find it. So that's what I was seeking out to help me through. And so what I started to do was just to read books as if it was my job, non-fiction, military history, even self-help books, fitness fanatics books, just something to look for someone who's had it worse than me. And there's plenty of people that have had it worse than me, and just go, okay, well, let's say David Goggins, for example. If David Goggins can go through all this racism and abusive father growing up, if these other people can have their legs blown off and keep moving forward, if this person can go through the Holocaust and keep moving forward, then who the fuck am I to complain about laying in bed all day with my pump plugged into my bloody wall pump? And that's what it was. So I was really just searching for perspective. And so every time I get down, I would just look for this perspective to just be like, no, fuck that. Keep going forward. So I read a lot of books about the Holocaust to keep going. But that question, Max, yeah, definitely super tempted to just get drunk, but I just knew that it wasn't going to do me any favors. I'm already laying in bed with a big chunk of my own vomit next to me wasn't going to fucking help the situation. Hey, so yeah, it was hard. It was fucking tough. It was fucking tough.
Because I mean, there's endone and Valium and benzos. They're a slippery slope, and they're overprescribed, right? I mean, there's an epidemic going through the United States. Apparently, the biggest prescribed medication is misuse of prescribed medication is phenomenal, and that stuff makes you not want to move, sad. Like, fuck it, I don't really care. I'm just going to zone out of reality for the next.
Yeah.
And it's hard because that's what's prescribed to you. So was there pain management any particular skills that you learned for pain management, or you're like, I'm just going to have to deal with it and get the fuck off of these things?
Yeah. So for pain management, unfortunately, this is where reading books, like you're going to find out I'm the biggest fan of reading books. You've got people, meditation and yoga, and obviously working out works for other people. Even like mental sort of pain, thinking about something, you go to the gym, you work out, you feel better about it, or you hit a boxing bag. But for me, trying these things like meditation and just calming my mind for the pain. I think they call it? Cognitive behavioral therapy and stuff like that for pain management. It didn't work because the pain was unbearable. So reading books I found was the best way to just zone out and just deal with the pain. But it's a very unique situation, but one that we all face once we get older. I just have had the great fortune to deal with it now in my young age.
Mate, it's a pretty positive story. Like I consider myself fairly disciplined and motivated, but if I was laying down for 14 months, I would have watched Netflix end to end, mate. I probably would have picked up a book once or twice, but it would have been too tempting to just sit there and watch TV and do nothing.
One of my sergeant mates, when I finally got back to work, the first thing he said to me was, mate, you'd be ready for Pornhub 2 by now. And I was like, yeah.
That'd be dangerous too.
But mate, yeah. I've completed Netflix. Like what? I finished Netflix. I finished it. Tick. I can die now.
Mate, that story alone is enough for me to say we need to get aware of cannabis in this country. Not to change this up. I had a conversation with a few people in defence about this last week. And like the trials are coming for different reasons, mostly mental health, and they're looking at mushrooms and MDMA first. But Australia is so conservative. We're that far behind the times with weed. Like you could have sat there eating CBD oil, and when you wanted to go to sleep, THC pills, whatever. You don't need to go and smoke joints all the time. But there's stuff available that would have been like good for pain, inflammation, for your guts, and then helped you get to sleep. I think, sorry, I'll probably go off on a tangent because I'm a bit of a cannabis advocate, but Australia needs to get with the times, I think.
Yeah, but sorry, Max. Oh, just quickly, I think that's a huge step forward. And what I don't understand is like the legislation and laws behind it are the things stopping it, not the actual outcome of what it means for people going through this thing. I've recently watched my elderly grandmother pass away, unfortunately. But you look at things like cannabis and you ask the why behind it, and it makes a lot of sense. You ask the why behind why it's still restricted, doesn't make as much sense. Doesn't make much sense at all.
Nah, it's just a political football. I mean, it'd be tough for you because I think the last people, when they do, it's inevitable. They're going to green light it eventually, but people in uniform will be the last ones allowed to use it. So you'd probably
I've got good knowledge from friends in different places, let's say places, mate, that make. And the reason why it doesn't get legalized is because the conservative base of the Liberal Party won't let it fly, so they lose votes.
Yeah, it's a generational thing. The boomers are still in charge, and the boomers grew up with all of the propaganda that if you smoke one joint, you're going to be schizophrenic and start raping and murdering people. And my parents' generation still, they grew up as hippies, and then for some reason got brainwashed into believing that plants are bad for you. So I don't know. I think we've still got a little bit of a way to go, but the generational change will see next generation in Parliament. Surely we get a bit of the green light on green.
But that's another conversation as well. Even if the answer's not cannabis, like you said earlier, Max, about the opioid addiction in America killing so many people. Like I liken it to tobacco still being legal. Like I think it's the second biggest killer behind obesity, but there's no tax on fast food or anything like that. But with the opioids, like, why is that legal if it's killing more people than a lot of other things in the US? Definitely more than marijuana.
No, it's money and lobbyists, isn't it? Like the tobacco companies in Australia, vape pens. I mean, they're not good for you either. There's not enough research. Don't condone them, but they come out at parties. It's vape nicotine, and like they're illegal, but cigarettes aren't. And I'm like, that's the only reason there is because tobacco companies aren't currently the ones selling vape pens, and they've got all the money, and they're fantastic.
You can't tax vape pens $51 in a packet, mate.
Well, you can do it to tax whatever you want. They just haven't, and that's why it's a problem. Make them illegal. Who knows?
So, I mean, to get out of that and reading books, is it a thing you've always done, or is this something that you took up? Have you always been interested?
So the quick answer to that is no. When I was preparing for selection and I was starting to get into the mindset to actually do it, I wanted to start it like a year and a half out. And the first phase of my sort of training program for that, and when I got my pilonidal sinus, was just the mindset shift. So I actually started reading books probably 3 months before I had this injury occur to me or happen to me, and thank God. So no, I wasn't an avid reader before I got this injury, but I couldn't think of any other solutions to deal with it. So that's how it all started. And then because I wasn't going to work, and Adrian I think you made the point earlier about the Defence Force looking after you while still continue to be paid without providing any service. The way I looked at reading was, well, if I can't go into work and make a difference there, I'm just going to make a difference to myself as an individual. And the best way I think, to improve yourself is to increase your level of education, right? It's why we go to school for 12 years. So what I did, I just looked at reading books as if it was my job mix. So I'd wake up at 0500 and then I would read until lunchtime. I'd have lunch and then I'd read until I went to bed, just so I didn't feel guilty for receiving a paycheck. Obviously, like, I'm all about defense. I really value the Army and every opportunity that it's afforded me. So I thought the best way to give back to these guys looking after me is to upskill myself and educate myself. I was doing my master's at the time as well, but honestly, I think the master's cost $48,000. I could buy a lot of books with $48,000, and I would probably prefer to spend $1,000 on books than to get a master's degree education, because I honestly think that the best way to get ahead in life is to, go straight to the top. You mentioned Elon Musk earlier. Why would I go to university I'm still at uni, so I'm a hypocrite, to listen to a lecturer speak about leadership that I haven't heard of before, when I can go straight to the guy that's leading the world's best organization and learn directly from him. So for me, I feel like I've just skipped a step. And now if I want to learn about anything, I just go straight to the best person in the world that's written a book on it. And I go, okay, what's this guy reckon? Well, let's give that a crack, because he's obviously been hugely successful. So from not reading at all to reading all the time and still reading. I'll skip gym sessions now to read books, because I think it's just as important. And because I'm lazy, Adrian. Adrian smiles like, yeah, that's why.
Oh, mate, skipping the gym to read a book's better than skipping a gym to watch TV. But I think, mate, what you just said then, that resonates. Like, I think the world's kind of shifting in their mentality at the moment too. We can go and learn from people who sat in a classroom their whole life and got really good at reading other people's ideas, or we can go and learn from people with lived experience who have actually got stories to tell. And I know where I'd rather be learning stuff from, 100% from people with lived experience. Yeah. I mean, and I don't want to discredit, there's a lot of good professors out there that have got a lot of knowledge and stuff, but the majority that are out there, they've lived their entire life in a classroom. And that, for me, is not someone I really want to take life lessons from.
It gets hard, right? Because the guys in institutions, I mean, Charlie Teo spoke about this, the guys in institutions, that cog to move is so slow that you're reading 10-year-old information by the time you go to uni, and there's dudes doing things completely different. I think the technological curve and it's going so sharp now to keep up with it. Fuck, I don't know how. Probably reading books.
Well, I'll jump in real quick. That's something we've got to look at right now with the research we're doing. Psych stuff, uni, no dramas. Like, no doubt you want to partner with a uni. Any tech research that we're doing, like, we have to weigh up now. Do we want to partner with a university, or do we want to partner with Google, Apple, one of those companies who's doing all of this research themselves, moving faster, putting stuff like product to market as soon as something's ready to trial? I don't know. It's a tough one. Unis are a bit old and slow.
I think the credibility's shifting, right? Because Ben's noticing this as well. The credibility shift from universities, and they're like, no, you need a university to back a psych intervention or a holistic living thing. Whereas tech companies are just like, no, we kind of know this is what's happening. We've got a lot of data points to draw from. We're just going to fucking do it. And if it doesn't work, I know there's responsibility and stuff, and you're not going to condone outlandish stuff. You're not going to be like, everyone go and start taking fucking meth. But you have a responsibility. But on the other side of it, you need to keep up with the trend, right?
100%, mate. Well, but I think you got to be careful. I think they are taking great risks. They're not we don't see it. They're doing fucking social experiments on us all the time. And the fallout is we just get dumber and more attached to our phones, but they're doing dangerous social experiments. Don't worry about that.
And with that as well, Max, like you see it all the time with like great stories of innovators, etc. Like how many of like the world's top 10 smartest people that we see, you know, in history and current times, you hear the story where they dropped out of university. And with what you were saying earlier, Adrian, about, you know, their classroom smart, I don't think that there's any difference between individuals like, let's say, Bill Gates and a lead professor at Harvard University that's teaching IT. I don't think that there's any difference. But as far as their knowledge goes, because they've probably read the same books, but the difference is that Bill Gates turns it into actionable outcomes and isn't utilizing it to teach others. He's using it to create, right? Which is incredible. And I think that's a big difference. And what's interesting to me as well now, reading so many books, is, you know, all of these guys have done just that, just read hundreds of books. And I think as individuals, we really underscore ourselves to be like, oh, I can't do that because I'm not as smart as this guy. But I think the difference is like, and I'm not having a crack at either one of your intelligence, but look at Swiss 8. You know, you guys.
Oh, here we go. Yeah, no,
we're fucking knuckleheads, mate. Don't worry about that.
So you guys have just done it. You know what I mean? You didn't just talk about it. You've been doing it. I think this is like you know, close to 40 podcasts, as well as everything else that you're doing. I'm sure you guys would attest very humbly that you're not smarter than anyone else, but you're fucking determined. And that's the difference between Bill Gates and a Harvard professor. So the big thing about reading, I think that's important, that I want to get the message out about, is that you're no different to, you know, your boss. You're no different to your boss's boss. You all have the same intellectual capacity and capability. It's just about who takes the most action, not to get ahead in life, but to better themselves and upskill themselves the most. I think that's very important, because you read Elon Musk's book and you go, there's nothing too outlandish about that. I could probably do that if I read the right book.
Mate, I 100% agree. And I feel like you may have fallen asleep in a few classes at ADFA, because I'm pretty sure they teach you that you are smarter than everyone, don't they? They pull that module out.
Because this is the first time I'm meeting you, obviously, Adrian. I watched a few of your podcasts in the lead up to this afternoon, and there was I skipped along, and there was a segment where you guys are talking about ADFA and RMC, and I don't know if you're saying the most positive things. I'm like, oh fuck, I'm gonna have a tough crowd tonight.
Nah, mate.
But you're right, mate. That's exactly what they taught us.
Yeah, good. Nah, mate. I mean, any chance we get, we take the piss out of officers. Obviously, it's just what diggers do.
I'm tracking.
Yeah, good.
So, what is the most? Because I mean, fuck, we're talking about taking action. We're talking about the power of decision, right? And that's the power of decision was Tony Robbins. I've read some of his stuff. He's fucking phenomenal.
He's excellent.
So if you had, I want to get right into it now. What was the most profound? What was the book that hooked you into like, I need to keep going with this? Or like, do you know, like, what is the most profound book you would say if you're going to read something that's going to start you on your path of action and self-discovery and everything? It's this book, and this is what I'm doing, and this is what I'm doing now with Brothers and Books.
That's a really good question, and I don't think I've mentioned it so far, but I read over 100 books in this year. And the thing about reading books is, similar to growing up and life experiences, every book that you read seems to be better than the last. And the reason that is because as you learn new things, right, like neural pathways, right, you get the neural pathways, and you learn new things, you read the next book and it may be similar to the book that you've just read, but it introduces a new concept. What happens in your brain is it connects the two ideas to create something new and a deeper understanding of that. So it's hard, because now as I read books, I'm like, wow, this is an amazing book. I'd recommend this book to everyone, but it's only because of the amalgamation of books that I've read. But I will say that the book that hooked me to sort of wanting to read more is A Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. because you read that book, and Viktor Frankl was a psychologist, and he was a Holocaust survivor, and the book's about 200 pages long. The first 100 pages of the book talks about his experience in the concentration camp, and not knowing whether or not his wife had died, but watching a lot of his friends die, and obviously going through all these inhumane acts, cruel acts from the Nazis to the Jews. And that's the first 100 pages. And the second 100 pages talks about the psychological effects of that and what he witnessed people that didn't make it through do, and what people who did make it through did. And he puts down the determining factor on their mindset. And he introduces a concept called logotherapy, which is, I think, Latin for purpose therapy or meaning therapy. And he talks about if you can find the why, and I think Dr. Seuss says this as well, then I'm misquoting it, but you can do almost anyhow, right?
Also famously quoted by Jordan Peterson as well.
Yeah, Jordan Peterson, excellent.
Yeah.
Mate, I got to Google it. There's someone way older than those boys. That's like, give me a why and I'll find any hows. A fucking, who was it?
Nietzsche said that.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, Friedrich Nietzsche, yeah.
Yeah. Fuck. So this is, and this is the thing. This was the crux, the turning point.
Yeah, that's it. And as soon as I realized, I'm like, shit, it's about what you know and what you can do internally. You know, you flip it on its head. If I can increase my mental capacity and my mindset, well, you know, Viktor Frankl got through the Holocaust. I can get through this fucking injury and crack on. But really, it's not talked about enough. I know you guys talk about mindset a lot, but as you both know, like it's not something that you determine a need for until you need it. And it's a big part of growing up. You think, you know, you're 10 feet tall and bulletproof, to quote a book I've recently read. And it's not until you're not bulletproof that you figure out what's most important, and it's all up here.
Yeah, because they're talking about, I mean, this is stuff like Vietnam, like the Changi Death March, all the World War II POW survivors, guys who got locked up. One dude built his dream home in his mind, like it was a purpose and a will to move forward. Comes out with how we train people to fight. I think I brought this up a couple of times, how we train people to fight when they get shot. Like you have to lay down and play dead now. People who haven't been taught to do that don't. And it's about ingraining that purpose. And that's the biggest thing that we're doing now. Like we're super excited. We're going to the Fink in June, and we're doing a whole event series literally based around pursuit of purpose is what the event is based in. It's about getting dudes together and giving them a purpose. Not like equine therapy has its place or whatever it is, but you need to get guys to do hard shit and re-engage in the community and find a purpose in life. And whether that's a community or a new path, that's a perfect segue into that event series that we're trying to do. I think it's pursuit of purpose, mate. And I think that's what the first thing that will affect your mindset beyond anything else. And even Charlie Teo said in a couple of podcasts ago, he said there's people that should have survived that willed themselves to die in some of his surgeries. And there's people that shouldn't have lived that didn't want to die and they refused to. They just had a purpose to keep moving forward. That's pretty powerful, man.
Yeah, and I think Bram Connolly in his book, obviously the X2 Commando soldier, he talks about frames of reference and just being able to cast your mind back to something. You know, you talk about purpose, and I wish you all the best with that because that is a great mission and it's a hard one to achieve. But I'm sure you guys will fucking kill it. You know, casting your mind back to frames of reference of difficult things that you've done in the past to help you moving forward. It's like you go for your first pack march and you're like, what the fuck? What? Mine must be fitting incorrectly. No, that's just how they feel. They're fucking shit. But then, you know, you continue to do it and you cast your mind back and like, fuck, remember how much I was hurting? If I can do that, I can do this. So now that I've gone through 14 months of isolation and stuff, I don't get too worried about any sort of obstacles in my future. So it's a huge silver lining to the whole thing.
Mate, I'm just looking through. I've got your Instagram account up. I've looked through it a few times because there's some sick books. I've read a couple. Obviously, don't read anywhere near as much as you. Mostly listen to audiobooks these days because I just retain it a lot better. You've read all these books. Do you still retain all the information from all of them?
Yeah, so that's a good question. And my partner hit me up one time, and I'd read Ray Dalio's book, Principles. This is about 2 years ago now. And she said, there's no way, because I think she'd went to work, she came home and I'd read a couple hundred pages. She's like, there's no way you've read this properly. You know, I read books, and I recited back to her that Ray Dalio, this is 2 years ago now, this is one of the first books I read. I said, Ray Dalio is actually responsible for the chicken nugget because he was able to work with one of the biggest banks in America and McDonald's to get fixed chicken prices and rates so that they were affordable enough and that the market wasn't going to change, so that McDonald's could introduce chicken McNuggets to their menu. So yeah, you fucking retain it. It's incredible. Hey, it's absolutely incredible because you're in that focused state, right? Where you're receiving all the information. And I've got nothing against the TV. I've got nothing against, I probably don't like social media that much. But, I'm not acting my age. I'm 26, but I sound like a 55-year-old. Attention spans, because of mobile phones, is fucking crazy.
15 seconds.
Yeah. So if you can read a book, and a lot of people struggle to read a book when they first start out. They lose focus. They read a couple of lines. They get distracted. They put it down. They pick it up. They check their phone. It's actually a pretty difficult thing to do as a habit, same as going to gym. But you definitely retain it. You absolutely retain it.
Mm. Yeah, I find, I listen to audiobooks mostly when I'm driving because I'm on the road all the time, and it's because like you're conscious. I don't know which one's conscious and which one's subconscious. I'm either driving consciously or subconsciously and then listening. Who knows? But someone knows. But I find I retain almost everything if I listen to audiobooks while driving because I don't have the ability to be distracted because I'm focusing on the road and just absorbing noise, and it's magic. I fucking love it.
See, I don't retain. I think I have to read. I stopped reading.
When you were 5?
Probably when I was about 3.5, dropped out of... no, I read heaps, mate. I was a bit of an avid... I was an avid reader and then joined the army and decided not to... Read a couple of self-help books when I was 20, 21. Started that, and then that just went. I was like, oh, no.
You read The Secret
the
7
art of the
times.
Game, how to pick up chicks in Townsville.
Yeah, fuck, that was slim pickings.
Mate, sorry, no shit. That is one of the things, though, that one of the gateways for me to get into reading a bunch of stuff on psychology, human behaviour and all that was those books when I was younger. It's like young dudes full of testosterone and just go like, oh, I need to be able to pick up chicks and I'm insecure and I don't really know how the world works. I'm going to read these. And there's some parts in them that are for fuckwits and there's some parts in them that you're like, this makes sense. And that I went down a rabbit hole, and thanks to... I forget what it was called. It was something about like, I'll have to dig it up. It was a bit of evolutionary biology and psychology stuff. It was talking about how we are still monkeys, and therefore, to be better at mating, you need to start thinking more like a monkey. Bit dangerous these days, but it opened the door, and I started reading heaps more psychology. So don't write off bloody how to pick up chick books.
Look at that information retention as well, right?
Yeah.
You said you were really young, like 18 to 20. Like, that's incredible. I don't know how old you are now, but I assume that's a decade or so ago.
35,
now,
mate. It was a lifetime ago.
Yeah, right. Now, try and remember the last Facebook video that you mindlessly watched. Exactly right.
Don't make me.
It's insane. It's insane, the amount of information. You probably know, but it's hard to recall multiple things. Whereas for myself, like I can be like, yep, I've read these books in my lifetime. Like, you know what I mean? And you remember that. And there's very few things in my life, at least, I don't know about you guys, that I can remember. You know, if the normal person, if I was to ask, hey, list the top 3 memories, your happiest times of your life. People can't even answer that question, which is crazy. But hey, what books have you read? What was the first book you read? Everyone remembers what was the first book that you read, because the power of stories, as you guys know, it's in religion, it's in good companies and organizations. People, monkeys, love fucking stories. Love stories. And it's what separates us from the animals is just stories. And it doesn't matter if it's Jesus or Buddha, if it gives people purpose and common grounds, that's what it is. And the power of stories has been, it's made us not be monkeys anymore and move on to walk upright.
Mate, Jordan Peterson touches on that a lot too, as far as pulling the stories out of religion, but also the fact that we've lost, not completely yet, but we're losing our way of or the understanding of how powerful it is to pass on actual knowledge in stories. I mean, maybe we come back to that. I don't know, but there's definitely agree with you, mate. I don't know how deep you want to go, Max, but there are some books here that I want to unpack.
Yeah, we got the brothers in books himself here.
So just quickly, Adrian, I may not be able to talk to all the books. What the Instagram page does, it allows people to share their story, because I love people's stories, and I got the best job in the world now because I get to read them come in. It's the same as you guys, right? Getting to talk to all these incredible people about what they've gone through. You guys love it just as much as me, you story whores. And so what happens is people write in their stories to Brothers in Books. And they're stories of success over adversity, and they talk about a book that helped them during that period of adversity. So there's a few books that I've thrown up that really helped me out, but I'm happy I can discuss probably most of them, mate. But they're all recommended by my audience. And then what I try and do is, because there's only a few, like there's heaps of books in the world, millions of books in the world, but there's only a few key ones that really can change people's perspectives and lives. So what I do is I get the recommendations in from people, and then I try and find those books and then donate them to places where they're going to find someone that, like me, find a book like, let's say, Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life. It sounds like you've read it, Max. Great book. Now, that's a book that's been recommended on the page. What I try and do is I'll find that book and I'll put it in somewhere where I know that someone who's vulnerable or going through some shit might pick it up and make it readily available, just like your phone's readily available. So hopefully, instead of someone watching or getting up to Pornhub 2, they pick up Jordan Peterson's book instead. Even in quarantine, isolation hotels, just stick a book in there, you'll probably pick it up. But happy to talk about the book. Sorry, long story short.
That was the book that I bought. I think there's a few people that have been in quarantine. I think it was my cousin. I bought him that book. So I'm like, maybe you're stuck in here for 2 weeks. This will keep you motivated at least a little bit. So you reckon, I'm still obviously just pulling stuff from your Instagram. If anyone's listening, Brothers and Books on Instagram. I'm gauging, right, so the hit rate on your books, do you reckon part of that is like if people have read it, they're gonna like it? Because Dono's book blew up. Obviously, I haven't read it yet, but apparently that's fucking fantastic. I've got to give it a read. Then just below that, the Bible. Have you gone cover to cover?
Yeah, so as a young kid, I did read the Bible cover to cover because my mother dragged me to church every week, and I thought reading the Bible was more entertaining than what was going up on stage. So I have read the Bible cover to cover, but when that book got sent in, it shouldn't surprise me. But the response to that book, I actually thought, I was like, I don't know. A lot of these books are military self-help related. Here's the Bible, religion. I didn't know how people would react to it, but people fucking love religion and the Bible. Absolutely love it. Yeah. Still. But I think it's just not really kosher to talk about these days, to be honest.
Oh, mate, you should talk about whatever you want. That very copy, like the army coloured one, that's the only one I've ever attempted to read. I didn't make it all the way through. I took it to Afghan with me. I'm like, if there's ever a place and a time that I'm going to pick up religion, it might be here. But I started just reading it at night because there's some stories in there that's fucking entertaining. And I guess that's the whole point with the Bible. You take out of it what you need at the time. But it was just so long, mate. I got a few, I don't know, what do you call them? Chapters. What are they called? The books of the Bible. A few books in. And then fell off, and I've never picked it up again, unfortunately. One day.
Just quickly, Adrian. So this is the thing about books as well, and you'll see a few books repeated on the page because people have taken different meanings, right, from the stories. On that specific book, the Bible, the story that was sent in is actually about someone that enlisted into the army. And then, unfortunately, found out like they suffered with anxiety and stuff like that, and it wasn't for them. But through reading the Bible and stuff like that, they were able to recover after they left the army and become a PTI and stuff like that, and then start helping other people with their own mental health. So it's really interesting what different people take from it. Another woman sent in the Bible, and she suffers with permanent nerve damage in her face, so constant pain, and faith is her cognitive behavioral therapy to deal with her pain, her faith in God. So it's really interesting how people take different things and lessons from these stories.
So, I'm an atheist. I think Encyclopedia Britannica was volume 1 of that. The Bible per se. I think Jesus existed. I think he was a good storyteller. I think it was people trying to understand the world. That's my theory on it. But we know the conversion rates in prisons and end of life situations is quite high when they go to religion, because they're looking for something to explain what the fuck has happened to them. Do you have an obligation now? So you have high performers and you have dudes that just want to be sick at life coming to you and wanting to read books, but you would also get people who are probably in some fucking holes. Is there I don't know, you don't have an ethics committee, but is there an ethical where you're like suggesting books that, or you're just like, I'm just trying to help people?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And I think out there, in my experience, dealing with different surgeons, I had good surgeons, I had bad surgeons, and people are people and they make mistakes. I don't come from it and, read this, mate, and you'll get better. All I do is I provide book recommendations off of the list, and hopefully someone out there, so we had a woman write in and she actually watched a man get burnt alive. She went to work one morning and a crazy person jumped on the same bus that she was on, and she doused a man in fuel, and the person doused a man in fuel and lit him on fire. So she went from just on her way to university one morning to watching a man get burnt to death and experiencing that. And so she wrote in her story. And now, God forbid that there's another person in Brisbane that experiences this. But if people go on the page and they have a look at the stories that are coming through, maybe someone else is suffering that sort of same weird, unique atrocity, and they can see, okay, this woman has gone through a similar thing as me. I've suffered watching someone get murdered, and she found a lot of views from reading this book. I might try and read that book. So it's less about the books and more about just connecting people to show that they're not alone. Because I mentioned earlier, I went on all these blogs trying to find someone with as deep of wound as me, that had suffered as many surgeries or as long, and I just couldn't find it. Hey, and all I wanted was just to see that someone else had gone through this and made it out the other side. So Brothers in Books is less about me being like, read this book, you'll sort out your alcoholism. It's more like I just give people the platform to hopefully scroll through and find something on there. It's like, okay, this guy suffered with alcoholism. It's very similar to myself. He read this book and he seemed to get a lot of purpose out of it. And then they go and they read that book. And if they get something out of it or not, well, at least they fucking done something, right? Because you mentioned before, alcoholism, opioids, putting on a bit of pudge and hurting too much or just being too tired, you lose that action part of getting better. So what I'm trying to do is just encourage someone taking the first step to go out and read a book, and hopefully that leads to other good habits and routines as well. That's where I stand on it. Hopefully someone gets something out of it. If they don't, well, at least they've read a book, and maybe they'll find something in the book that interests them, and it'll lead to other healthy habits and hopefully something that gets out of the hole.
100% agree, mate. That's one of the best lessons the army teaches, I think, is like when you're in a position, like make a decision, go left, go right. No one actually gives a fuck. One way might be right, one might be wrong. Same as recommending books, going like read it or don't. You might read it and hate it. You might read it and love it. You might take something away from it. You might not. But doing nothing is definitely going to be worse than reading a shit book. And, mate, physically and mentally, sedentary behaviour, either physical or mental, is the pathway to death. And, like, if you were physically in a position where you couldn't move, but you're moving your brain, I think it's got to be, well, it is. It's better than than sitting around feeling sorry for yourself 1,000%.
And unfortunately, that's a position a lot of people find themselves in. It's really unfortunate.
Mate, question. I'm going to just throw random ones. So this is going to follow no structure anymore whatsoever, because I'm going to have random book questions. Dan Pronk's book. How'd you find that? I haven't read it.
70 Kilogram Dickhead. It gets written in all the time. People fucking love that book. The guy that first recommended it to me and brought it to my attention is actually a black belt in Krav Maga, and he's an international instructor. He read Dan Pronk's book and he was like, this is the best fucking book I've ever read. So yeah, really nice. Good. Really good.
Is it storytelling, or is there... I mean, he was a doctor, wasn't he? It's just, I'm guessing, around his stories overseas on ops?
Yeah, that's right. It talks about his journey from being a doctor, wanting to go into special forces, and then finally going into special forces, and some of the experiences that he had. And I think the big thing that so many people like it for is just how they can assimilate with his writing style. It's very to the point, obviously. And he speaks about his stories on podcasts and stuff, but his book is exceptional.
Yeah, Max, we've got to reach out to him.
He's coming on in 4 weeks. Yeah.
Mate, he's got the best fucking Wari photos of anyone on the internet. Like, I'm pretty sure it's him, the one with the mohawk, and then he's like burning fat stacks of cash. I'm like, that's gangster. Anyway.
In the book, it actually says how he hired a photographer to go overseas with it.
Oh, good. 11 bats. That was sick.
Yeah, so Alex Lloyd actually recommended that book, the owner of Life on the Line.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it was one of the few books that he hadn't published through Macmillan Australia. So he's like, it would be unethical if I was to promote my own book. So here's one that I didn't publish.
Mate, Max, have you got anywhere you want to take this? Because I'm just going to keep looking at books.
Yeah, you can keep banging that, mate.
Yeah, good.
I want to know... So... We spoke about the books. Has there been books that you've read that you've been like, I can't pull anything out of that? Because I'll tell you a story, mate. Everyone likes a story. I picked up a self-help book and it was about happiness and finding true happiness or whatever. And I read it and I fucking couldn't disagree with it more. I was like, it just read, maybe I was in the wrong frame of mind. Maybe it wasn't that for me at that time. But it was a book about finding happiness or something. And I was like, nope. Don't agree with it. And it wasn't from a prejudiced mindset. I had a complete open mindset to the book and gaining knowledge. And I was like, nah, disagree with you completely.
Do you know, what book was it?
I've still got it in the trunk downstairs. Yeah. It's got a big yellow circle. I don't know what it's, I'll find it and we'll put it in the comments 100%.
Yeah.
I'm like, fuck that.
Well, yeah. So you read and this is the thing that we talked about earlier. You come across some stuff, it doesn't make sense. Other times, it might make sense. And I know you're saying you read it with an open mind. I read stuff and I disagree with it, or I question it, or I just pay it off and move forward. I'm like, oh, that's not relevant information. And people think it's really taboo to, if you're not liking a book, to put it down. They're like, oh, I got to finish this. I got to finish it.
The funny thing is this, mate. Do you have internet? Now you don't read books. You're like, nah, fuck broadband. It's not a thing.
No, I got internet, man. I just never use. I got 10 megabytes of data a month, so it might be that.
Yeah, it could be a
thing. I've got the books to keep me warm, mate.
Yeah, that's it.
Mate, sorry, this is completely off topic. I was just scrolling social media while we're getting it back on. Jared Haynes going away for 5 years. 5 years, yep. Fuck me. That sucks. I mean, I don't know the story. It sounds like, what's he get done for? Sexual assault. So probably, well, I won't comment either way. But
yeah, you can't go.
Don't go there. He might, who knows? Guilty, innocent. Well, he's just going to jail, so I guess he's guilty. Going to jail. So he's a naughty boy. Yep. And
I think we need to reframe our society. This is coming back to, so reading books or Facebook, we've replaced books with Netflix, where you don't retain the information. I can watch some documentaries and then be like, fuck. I know there's different types of learners, but I need to read it off paper. I'm not an Audible sort of guy. I can't read audio books. I can retain it, probably 50% of it. Netflix is I think it's just dumbing down a whole generation of people. And that's probably going to be beneficial for people when dumb people don't know what they're voting for, what policies they're doing. Read a fucking book.
Legitimately, man. Legitimately, I can't agree more. I was on ABC Radio with Steve Austin, and he's like, what do you want to do? And I was like, I just want to make reading cool, man. Like, because when you're growing up, and I was probably the guy being like, you nerd, roughhousing kids around the library. But here I've got all these like guys like Dan Pronk, like you said, looks like an absolute weapon and is an absolute weapon. Writes a book, and you bet your fucking bottom dollar that Dan Pronk has read a lot of books that have motivated him and himself and his life. You guys have just had Mark Wales on the podcast. I was fortunate enough to talk to Mark Wales. Bet your fucking bottom dollar Mark Wales fucking read books, right? And around 2009, this is what I'm trying to liken Brothers and Books to. Around 2009, 2010, there was that guy, Ziz, right? That party goer, I think he's dead now.
The sauna guy.
That's the sauna incident, dude. And so what Ziz did for Australian gym markets, he fucking made it cool to fucking go to the gym, right? Everybody wanted to go to the gym. And Australia's the population got jacked. And everybody had a six-pack. Everybody's going to the gym. People were experimenting with steroids and stuff. I remember seeing Ziz in high school and skipping class to go to the gym with my older brother. And so I'd skip school to go to the gym because Ziz was doing it and it was really cool. So what I'm trying to do with books, right, is, well, here's Mark Wales, an extremely accomplished, smart, humble, great guy, right, reading fucking books. Here's Dan Pronk, reading books, very cool individuals, right? It's very hard to disagree with the special forces operator saying, hey, reading books made me who I am. So I'm trying to get these people in the forefront to the younger generation to be like, hey, do you want to turn out like your fucking heroes? Well, guess what they did? They read a shit ton of books growing up and it shaped their lives, and now they're extremely successful and they're fucking cool. So I'm trying to change the stigma around reading and education the same way that Ziz did with going to the gym. So yeah, I really just want to put these guys out in front of them and be like, is a heavily tatted up male with a six-pack, long lux like Mexa and a cool beard like Adrian, and going, hey, fucking read some books, just like you just said. I'm like, yeah, I'll probably read some books. Mexa just fucking told me to. He's pretty cool. You know what I mean? So, so that's what Brothers and Books is about. And yeah, like you said, replacing books with Facebook and stuff. I want to get the younger generation reading again, so that no matter what sort of politics are at play, what government's in power, what education's being driven down to the children or anyone else, they can still pick up a book and read about history, read and learn whatever the fuck they want to learn about. Instead of us complaining about, oh, they're not teaching kids this or that these days, I want to be like, well, here's your opportunity to teach your children whatever you want to teach them. Give them some books to read.
What do you think? So books is knowledge and it's the ability to have an open mind and read whatever you like, as opposed to what is government directed or whatever happens, right? So we can move away from government controlled media or large media corporations giving that information to us. We can go out and learn the information ourselves. On the opposite side of that, in order to control masses, we know that Hitler burnt books. In fact, burning books is kind of a thing. Not liking that to currently what's happening with banning books these days, right? So we're silencing people. What do you reckon about that? Is there damaging books that we shouldn't read? Is there? Would you say you don't read this book? It's he's going to set you off on the wrong path, or?
Yeah, so no, I don't think there's any books out there like that. I think there's a problem with extremism in anything, and this is a real fence-sitting answer. Apologies, Max, but I don't think there's any books like that floating around. The problem is the lack of other books that someone has read when they come across something like Mein Kampf. If Mein Kampf is the only thing that you read, then it'll probably lead you down a path to reading other books that, are sort of neo-Nazi style, and it could end up like that. But the problem with burning books is then you've got the issue of controlling what people do and don't read, and who are you to tell someone, read this book or don't read that book, you know what I mean? And it's just that controlling thing, and freedom of speech, right? It's another issue.
Mate, people need to be allowed to read whatever the fuck they want. Yeah, 100%, I reckon. And even if it's bad, telling them they can't read it, what's that going to make most people want to do? Go and read it anyway.
Yeah, that's right. Well, funnily enough, I read, everybody talks about communism, right? Communism this, communism this. Everybody's got an opinion on communism. So while I was down and out, I was like, well, this is my fucking chance. I'm going to read the Communist Manifesto because everybody seems to talk about it. But out of everybody that I've asked, nobody has ever read it. So, you know, it's just about how you take things. And if you listen to everything that you're told, then you wouldn't be yourself, would you? I don't think anybody does that.
Mate, you need to know both sides of the story or multiple if there is multiple. And, like, I'm pretty opinionated most of the time.
No.
But that's something I do try and pride myself on is trying to at least read articles or stories from both sides of the coin, on especially on divisive topics, and there's plenty of them kicking around these days. But it seems to be like a mentality that they say, read this side of the story, make the other side illegal to even research, and that's fucking backwards. You cannot.
That's why I think Facebook is something, and social media is a scary place. And I think someone's going to have to write a book about how to manage your social media, because all you end up doing is creating echo chambers. So you're actually radicalizing yourself and everyone around you, because you're only friends with people that think or do things like you, generally, right? Or, you know, I mean, there's different. But you create your own echo chambers. You effectively create a machine that radicalizes you left or right. Like, I never saw left and right as much as I did in the army, and I know I didn't pay as much attention to it. But now it just seems like it is fucking everywhere. You're either left or right. I was like, 10 years ago, people didn't give a shit in Australia about politics. Like, I got to go vote for the sex party or the hunting and fishing party.
Well, they still don't, mate. I think most people still don't give a shit about Australian politics, but we're just like force-fed American politics, and it's like, again, I've got to be careful with the stories I start telling. A few chicks I've dated recently were either Canadian or American, and instantly, first date, it comes up. They try and sneak it in there. I'm like, you motherfucker, you're just trying to figure out if I'm a Trump fan or not. Obviously I am. No, well, kind of. There's parts of him as a person. Anyway, I won't get into it. But it is, for a topic to come up on a first date, that means it is such a top-of-mind issue for people from that part of the world that they need to go, if you're on this side of politics, I can't date you. I'm like, good luck in life. Like, you're fucking closing yourself off to at least half of the world.
Half the world, yeah. And the other thing is as well, like, I'm not having to go at the girls you've been dating, but it speaks
amazing
to
women.
It speaks to what they can actually talk about in conversations. It's just whatever the hot topic is on Facebook or whatever media company is pushing at the time. You know, it's actually quite sad because like what we see on Facebook ends up being like 80% of our conversations, right? In normal day to day, we're talking about it now. You know, and it forces us to talk about it because we're thinking about it all the time. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a massive fan, while we're on the dating topic, of bringing up all of your extremes early on, because there's no point dating someone for a month and then finding out you're fucking polar opposites. I'd rather bring out all the... I mean, I'm also 35. I don't really want to waste time anymore. I just put all my baggage on the table and be like, there it is. You still want to stick around? Because I haven't bought you any drinks yet, so we can just call this now, save you some money. But I mean, one of the reason I'm going into that, one of the talks, I went on a date with this with a German chick, and she was, I don't know if we've talked about this on the podcast before. You can shut me up if we have, Max. But she was really standoffish to tell me where she was from, because she didn't have a German accent. She's been travelling for a long time, and I cottoned on. I'm like, why are you ashamed? She's like, our country still has a shame problem from the 1940s. And that I went down the rabbit hole, because there's parts, and this is going to be super unpopular, but there is parts of the Nazi war machine that, had they not have been the atrocities, like there's stuff today, like medical research, space research,
maneuver warfare,
all that stuff. I mean, it came from the Nazis, and I'm not trying to condone Nazi behaviour, but there's some shit in there that if we just go, if it was associated with Nazis, we have to make it illegal, burn it, you're not allowed to read those books, we're going to fucking delete some serious breakthroughs in history. And at the same time, but being in the world of mental health and psychology now, like, I don't fully buy into the concept that everyone's born good and then we make them bad. Like, I don't know enough about the topic to say whether or not we can give birth to psychopaths from day one, but the approach I like to take, and this is relevant to like the SF war crime stuff. It's relevant to when people are talking about Hitler. I'm like, something made that dude. And if reading Mein Kampf or reading books from Nazi Germany can help understand what turned, you would assume, an innocent young kid into Adolf Hitler, like, that's a fucking fascinating story, and I want to be able to read it. I don't want to pick up Mein Kampf one day and then get thrown in jail for it. So, yeah, long-winded way to say, like, we cannot make books illegal. People have just got to read what they've got to read. I'll just leave it at that.
No, and I fully agree as well. And the difference, there's no difference between any human being. Like at the core of it, we're all born exactly the same, whether it's good or evil. But you're 100% right. If and you know, there's the sentence in army that you hear all the time. You put any rank group together and they revert back to the lowest common denominator, right? There's a group of infantry soldiers at Singleton, but like the same way as a group of captains at Canungra on a course, right? It's the culture and it's the environment that you find yourself in at the current time, you know what I mean? And, you know, we've all done silly things on the piss even, but it was okay in that instance. And you wouldn't think that that's something that you would do normally. So I don't think it's as black and white and be like, oh, Hitler woke up one day and was like, I'm going to be Adolf Hitler. So to ban everything around it as well, like, no, I fully agree with your point.
Yeah.
Where do we take, where are you taking Brothers in Books now? And what's the aspect that, like, what do you want to achieve with it? And has Army helped you with it? And have you received funding? Like, what's going on? What's the whole story?
Yeah, so it's just me running Brothers in Books at the moment. Army's supportive of it because I saw a gap and well, I won't say a problem in the Army, but I saw that more officers were reading than soldiers, and as you guys can attest to, soldiers are the majority of the Army, and a lot of the times I see, and it's in society as well, it's not just Army, I see the older generations speaking ill of the younger generation, saying they've got a real resilience problem, you know, there's issues with soldiers or even their kids not being able to do all these things, or back in my day, you know, uphill both ways, and no one's really doing anything about it. So I think that the best way that we can increase their resilience levels is to get more people reading. So in the future, I'd like to hand Brothers in Books off to soldiers to actually run themselves, so that soldiers can get some professional development as well, that they actually run themselves, as opposed to officers saying, hey, read this book. They actually take ownership of it and be like, hey guys, like, fucking read David Goggins, read Tony Robbins. Like, this shit'll change your life. You know, if you're having a problem, don't sit there and whinge about it. Go and educate yourself on the problem. And yeah, so that's where I see it going. But currently, I donate a shit ton of books to a bunch of different areas where hopefully it finds someone going through a rough time, so that they pick it up and they can get through their rough time the same way that I got through mine.
Mate, that's sick. And I cannot agree more with the education. I mean, that's what you get out of books, hopefully. Education is a game changer for everything. And maybe there's correlations in that problem, because, I mean, everyone does say the younger generation, military or otherwise, like, younger generations aren't as resilient. Maybe it is because they're getting their life lessons from fucking Facebook in sub 15-second videos. Who knows? But I mean, I had these conversations with a bunch of people looking at, like, defence space, veteran space, transition space. They're like, what is the one thing we can do to, if we could put our finger on one thing that would have the most impact, what would it be? And I was like, it's got to be education. Like, even for your situation, right? You were searching for people with similar scenarios, similar situations, so you could learn, so you can understand what you're up against. And that's the key to resilience, I think, is first knowing what you're about to go through, and then trying to build some fortification around what the shit parts of it that you're going to experience. Yeah, all starts with education.
Right. And I think the parachute jump school in the Australian Army, the Special Forces Parachute Jump School, I love their motto, knowledge dispels fear, right? So now, like, my little action on whenever I come up against something that I'm worried about, well, fucking learn about it, you know, learn about it. And I see people talking about awareness with different things. And I'm like, education as well, like fucking get educated, because that's how you dispel your fear. Get rid of your anxiety. If you're worried about something, learn about it, overcome it. Because as soon as you know that it's not the boogeyman under your bed, it's just the wind outside, well, it's not so fucking scary anymore.
100%, mate. The unknown is what we fear the most. That's what creates anxiety for any topic. You get educated on it. Might not be. You might get educated and be like, all right, fuck, I've got an uphill battle ahead of me, but at least you know what's coming.
Yep.
Mate, we're gonna have to get you to. We put an information network together on the website. Hey, Adrian.
Yeah, it's not completely built yet, but yeah, it's in the process. We'll definitely have to plug this and get people to. Well, you're already doing fucking well on social media, but push as many people across there as possible to get some hot book tips.
Yeah, definitely. Anything to get more people reading, and I'm sure you guys have got book recommendations as well for the younger generation.
We're going to find one right now.
You guys are right. So this is the thing. You guys are, your human books. The information that you're sending out now is what you would find in a book, just delivered in a different platform. So fucking well done.
Cheers, mate.
Well, see how we go. What?
You got to be careful sending too many people here to get educated. I don't know if that's what this podcast's about. Well, it kind of is. There's some gems in there from the guests, and then me and Max just waffle on a bit.
What book are you reading right now, mate? What's the book you're on now?
So I'm not supposed to show this book to anyone because it's but I'm sure Mark won't mind. I just finished reading Mark Wales' book, Survivor. And yeah, it's a really good book. But yeah, no one's supposed to. He's already done the cover release. I'm just not allowed to show the pre-release cover. That was a really good book. I was planning to make a video this week about really popular Australian soldier books. With Robbo, Ben McElvee's book about Cameron Baird, and now Mark Wales' book as well. Fucking phenomenal reads. Absolutely phenomenal.
You've already got that on your page. How come you can't show it?
Yeah, I do. So I've got the cover on it, but he said I can't explain it without showing you. I'll just show you quickly. It's the pre-release version.
Oh, gotcha.
So,
Yeah.
So I need to write a book review on it, but I can't take a photo of the physical book to do it. I don't know. It's publishing things. I don't know.
Mate.
And then fortunately as well, I was able to write the foreword for a book just recently called My Broken Soldier, and it's a wife's perspective of helping her husband deal with PTSD and the trauma that he suffered in the Defence Force as well. So I thought that was an excellent read, and it's similar to the message that you guys, or the mission that you guys are taking up at the moment, which is just, it's hard to not see all the positives that you guys are sharing and spreading.
Well, mate, I'll drop a little book. James Long gave me this book. He's getting right into the Stoics at the moment, and I've been into the Stoics for a little bit. So I'm halfway through. Well, I'm a third of. Fuck, I've just started.
You've read the title.
You read the back cover. I'm done.
Back cover. I got the Audible and I've got the physical book coming, so I can read and listen along. Ryan Holiday's Lives of Stoics. Get that in you. See how we go. You've already read it. Fuck yeah. I don't know.
Oh, no, I haven't read it. I read The Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday as well. Excellent, mate. Excellent. And he's on Tim Ferriss, mate. You're going to love that book.
Oh, it's going to be good. See how we go.
The Obstacle is the Way. There's a couple on here, mate. I'm just going through my Audible account. There's one that I want to promote to people because it's fucking fantastic. It's labelled as fiction. However, I believe it is supposed to be non-fiction, but we're just not ready for it yet. So... it's called Secret Machines. It was one of the ones that Tom DeLonge, when Tom DeLonge went on Rogan's podcast, the Blink-182 dude, and he's got this new company called To the Stars Academy, and they're basically a bunch of NASA, NSA, intelligence community dudes he's put together on this board, and they've got two end states. One is to reverse engineer some of the craft from Area 51. And turn it into a commercial means of travel fuck knows how far they're getting with that. But the other one is to go, we know all this shit about aliens. It's there. We just have to slow cook the frog, trickle release it to the public, and we're going to do that through storytelling. And so he wrote all these books, and I think they're going to make some movies and stuff. But he wrote a series of these books called The Secret Machine, with an S on the end. Fuck, I've just lost it. Secret Machines. It's with a K though for secret. And they're basically stories of intelligence communities and talking about their interactions with UFOs and aliens and that. And they were 16 hours. I listened to that like non-stop. Could not, I'll put it down, it's the wrong word, but could not turn it off. They're so good. So I'll write a little thing up and I'll send it through to you so you can put that one up. You do. There was one other fiction one. You put much fiction in there? Not a lot.
Less fiction has come through, but heaps of people read fiction and find a lot of joy out of it. So I try and encourage it, but a lot of the time people that do read fiction, they'll look at the page and be like, oh, fiction's not for the page. So send it through, because I encourage all reading.
Well, I mean, that's the only reason I brought it up, because I don't really read fiction at all unless I've been told, like I read The Alchemists, for example, and like unless you've been told that there's some lessons in there that you can take away, then I'll give it a crack. But yeah, if I'm going to do fiction, I'm going to be laying in bed staring at Netflix, mate. So when I read, it's normally always non-fiction. But these ones, if anyone reads them, just tell yourself it's non-fiction and you'll get more out of it.
Yeah, no, there's The Alchemists, there's heaps of good ones like that follow the story. I think The Mindful Warrior, that's a fiction book, and it's phenomenal.
Nice. Well, mate, I've got my next 4 books already that I pulled out of your Instagram page.
This is a problem. This is the only problem with the Instagram page. People look at it like, fuck, I'm going to read some fucking books. So people will send me photos like, hey, I just read this book. I've got this book ordered. I'm reading this book now. I'm like, fucking oath. Yeah, so it's good to see that it's gaining some traction. And every time, I think... I've only been doing Brothers and Books for close to 6 months now. We're close to 4,000 followers on Instagram. But the amount of books that have been read because of the page, it's got to be over 1,000 books. So I'm fucking, every time someone sends me in, like, I'm reading this book now, I saw it on your page, I just get overjoyed, hey, because I'm just like, fucking oath, like, good for you.
That's sick. And I mean, that goes back to it links back to your Ziz story. Like, I was going to bring up that Ziz's addiction was you can go to the gym and you get to flex and look at yourself in the mirror, and that's like the ego thing. But there's an ego piece to reading books. Like, everyone wants to flex their brain and go, I'm smart because I read this book. Here's the one line I remembered from it. But that's fucking cool that people actually want to come out publicly and go, yeah, I've read all these books.
The big one that got sent in, it was released this year. I think it just won an award for the best biography. It was from a man called Eddie Jacku, who was another Holocaust survivor, and he's an Australian. And he wrote a book called The Happiest Man Alive. And it talks about all the atrocities that he went through, but just how fucking happy his life is because he went through all of that. Every single day that post the Holocaust, he has celebrated and he's lived the world's happiest life because every day he's like, woohoo, I am not dead. I am alive. I'm going to make the absolute most of it. And it was awesome once that book got recommended. I think 3 or 4 people read it and just sent me in photos and were like, this has changed my fucking life. This has changed my life. It's hard to be upset at your current situation when you read someone who's been through that. He's like, nah, it's pretty good. Life's fucking pretty good. Oh, I got to listen to him. I'm not going through the Holocaust. I just got a big wound in my back.
Yeah.
Mate, you've got me stuff that I'll probably be reading. How long does it take you to read a book now?
I'm pretty quick now. You know,
yeah,
it's just like going. Well, I don't say that, man. I say the opposite.
Oh yeah, that's right.
No, I got pretty quick at reading books, 100%, because it's just like, you know, sprint training. If you sprint every day, you're gonna get quicker. If you read every day, you're gonna get quicker at reading books.
And retention's still up there?
Yeah, it's right up there. Hey, I actually think it improves as you go along. So I'm sure there's heaps of stuff about reading and memory tests, etc. But my memory's definitely increased.
All right, so, mate, you've got me thinking. Righto, Well, I don't know how quick I'll be. It takes me about a week to read a book, so we'll see how we go. Maybe 2. Mate, thanks for coming on, mate. It's a fucking phenomenal story, and I think what you're doing has got it's got a long life ahead of it, mate, and it's gonna get cool, mate. So thanks for coming on, mate, and sharing your story. It was sick having you on.
Cheers, mate.
Hey, cheers for letting me share my story, boys. Thanks so much.